Hello again, everyone. This is Ahmed Jahaz Al-Sbai, and today I'm going to speak a little bit about NFPA 58 or the National Fire Protection Association's LPG or liquefied petroleum gas uh, code. Let's start with what is LPG? What is liquefied petroleum uh, gas? So liquefied petroleum gas are hydrocarbons or petroleum gases that are in the form of liquid, pressurized, uh, and uh, converted to liquid for transportation and for storage and for use. Although in using LPG, it is vaporized. Um, Yep. Mainly it's propane, butane, propylene, or a mixture of these gases. Now, um it's stored under pressure inside pressurized vessels, and if if it escapes or if it's converted to again to its vapor state, it will expand in volume almost 260 times or 270 times, as opposed to natural gas, which is also liquefied, that will expand in size to almost 600 times, as opposed to water. If water is converted from its liquid state to a vapor state, it will expand 1600 or 1700 times. Just additional information for you, gentlemen. So LPG is pressurized, mainly is liquefied through pressurization, and also can be pressurized through reducing its temperature to below is its boiling point or refrigerating. And natural gas is almost every time is liquefied through reducing its temperature and below its boiling point. Anyway, let's go ahead and see what kind of hazards associated with LPG. So LPG is a highly flammable gas, and it's flammable at a wide range of concentrations. Flammable gases has a property of the called the flammable range. There is the upper flammable range, and there is the lower flammable range. If the concentration of that gas is higher than the upper flammable range, it will be too rich for it to ignite if an external heat source is introduced. If it's below the lower flammable range, it will be too rich to ignite if an external source of ignition introduced. If it's within that range, if an external source of ignition is introduced, it will ignite. It's heavier than air, means that if it escapes its container, it will settle to low points. This is very important for emergency responders to consider, not only emergency responders, but in people who are handling LPG in general. It can cause large degrees in temperature when converted from liquid to gas. This is not unique for LPG. Most gases has this property. This can pose a health hazard, frostbites, whatever, and can be create a hazardous condition. It is colorless and odorless. You can't see it, you can't smell it, which makes uh, it's very hard to identify any leak of LPG. It can bleve. Bleve is an abbreviation for boiling liquid evaporating vapor explosion. This is a violent and dangerous condition where pressurized vessels containing LPG. It's not only for LPG, but since we are talking about LPG, pressurized vessels are exposed to external heat source from fire, from whatever, and if no cooling efforts is being done, this vessel will rise in temperature, and the LPG inside will rise in temperature, which will make it evaporate and increase the pressure inside that vessel. So the external heat will have an effect on the physical condition of the actual shell of the vessel, which will weaken it, and the liquid inside will evaporate and increase the pressure from within. Eventually, the vessel will explode, causing a bleve, fragments to explode violently, and fragments of that vessel will fly away in all directions, hitting targets 100 meters away or more, hitting buildings, hitting people, causing secondary fires. And it's a condition that you will never want to experience. So what's the scope and purpose of NFPA 58? It applies to storage and handling and transportation of LPG, liquefied petroleum gas. The first document was adopted or originated back in 1932. The actual document covers, the scope covers LPG systems, including containers, piping, and associated equipment, whatever is good, valves, pressure valves, level indicators, vents, and all attachments. It aims to provide an acceptable degree, so that's the purpose, acceptable degree of protection from hazards associated with LPG. So it will address the hazards of LPG and will provide safeguards and mitigation controls against these hazards. Now, it doesn't apply for LPG used in utility plants. This type of LPG used in utility plants are covered under NFPA 58, doesn't cover the use of LPG within residential homes or houses. This is covered by NFPA 58. It doesn't cover LPG, the production of LPG, doesn't cover LPG within chemical plants or refineries, and it doesn't cover the transportation of LPG through air, rail, or water. So who's responsible for enforcing the requirements? Whenever it comes for the enforcement of the law, of the code, of the standard, it's almost always the AHJ authority having jurisdiction, or the local authority, or the governing authority. Retroactivity is allowed whenever, so it is not required to retrofit or retrofit any additional requirement from the new code. However, whenever the situation requires us to, in order to address a hazard that exists and not can be addressed unless we implement the new requirements or retrofit something, then the code requires it. Equivalency. This applies not only for NFPA 58, it applies to most NFPA codes and standards. The codes and standards of NFPA does not prohibit the use of any other alternative methods as long as these methods, as opposed to the prescribed methods within NFPA 58, doesn't tell you cannot use any other method. You can use any other method as long as it achieves the same goal of the prescribed methods. But you must have these methods approved by the authority having jurisdiction. This is a general requirement. This is general information for most of NFPA codes and standards. There is the prescribed method and there is the performance-based method. However, if you want, the prescribed method is the requirements of the code, what is written in the code or the standard. The performance-based, this is special engineering, alternative methods. However, this is under the discretion of the approval of the authority having jurisdiction. You cannot implement it until you have the approval from the authority having jurisdiction. Definitions. I don't want to take a lot of time in this part. So there is approved, listed, and labeled. Approved. Whenever it comes to approved, in most cases, you need to think about the AHJ. AHJ approved means that a material, device, system, or whatever that is acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction. Listed means any equipment, any device, any system, any service that is included in a list published by an organization acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction. This organization or this entity is concerned in evaluating the performance, the safety, the integrity of these devices, be it fire devices, safety devices, whatever. This can be underwriter laboratories, it can be whatever. يعني you need to check with your local authority which organizations that are acceptable to them. It's not limited for underwriter laboratories. It's not limited for SASU. It's not limited for CE. Okay, you need to check with them. But the most common is UL. Labeled means that that organization that is acceptable to authority having jurisdiction has some kind of symbol, mark, or anything on that device, as illustrated here below in this fire extinguisher. Shall indicates a requirement which is found. Shall is also always found in the chapter side of the document. Should indicates a recommendation which is found in the annex part. So most NFPA codes and standards, the document itself is written. There is the chapter part and there is the annex part. The chapter part contains the requirements, the mandated things, and the annex part contains the recommendations, the supplementary information, things that are not required, however, it's recommended. So you will see shall always in the chapter side and the should in the annex side. Inspection, testing, and maintenance, ITM. These are activities. And inspection is also always associated with visual inspection, mostly. Visual inspection, not moving anything. We're just visually checking the component, the system, the design, or whatever. Testing is always associated with running things. We're checking the operation, operating something. Okay, and maintenance. One thing I tell the people that attend my classes, an ITM activity does not fall under inspection, does not fall under in testing. Most likely, in most cases, will fall under maintenance. This is cleaning, repairing, replacing, lubricating, greasing, so on and so forth. The AHJ, ladies and gentlemen, is the authority having jurisdiction. It's defined in NFPA as an entity or an individual or an office or an organization or all of these together that which is concerned in enforcing the requirements of the code or to approving material system devices or whatever. This can be the fire marshal, this can be the civil defense, this can be insurance company, or all of these together. It's not only one. In most cases, there are several AHJs. Terminologies here, I'm not going to go through it all, but it's very important to know what is a container, what is a cylinder. Cylinder is considered a container. However, not all containers are cylinders. So a cylinder is a portable container with a marked capacity of water capacity. When we measure capacity of a container or a cylinder, we measure it in the capacity of water, not the LPG itself. This is throughout the document itself. A container is a capacity not more than 100 pounds or 454 kilograms or less. However, a container can be this or bigger. As opposed, يعني, if we mention like the ASME containers, these are containers that with capacity of not more than 4,000 water capacity, 4,000 gallon water capacity. Now, you will see institutions and organizations such as ANSI, the American National Association Institute, American Petroleum Institute, the SME code. The SME code is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code. And there is another code, the API ASME code, which is API containers, sorry, API SME containers, which are designed per the requirements found in the unfired vessels code. You will see it throughout the document, and it will reference it whenever it comes for the design, the alteration, modification of such devices or containers. There is also one highly recommended or referenced organization is the Compressed Gas Association. A very important thing also, term is the important buildings. Important buildings and point of transfer. There are two separate things. However, let's just define it now. Important buildings are buildings that is considered non-expendable in a fire situation. And there is the point of transfer. These are locations for connection and disconnection of LPG systems, transfer the LPG or something like that. Now, these two conditions or these two terms are very important to understand because there are huge requirements, many requirements when it comes to these separation distances from these 2 points, from the important buildings and the point of transfer. Okay, be it the storage, be it the transfer, be it the use of LPG from these two points, and the source of ignition, by the way, to the point of transfer when it is in operation, when we're actually using these points of transfer, because these points of transfer can be not used and can be used. When it's used, there are specific requirements when it comes to the separation of source of ignition, be it the possible sparks or the naked actual flame being worked with. It means welding, grinding, whatever, electrical devices, so on and so forth. Now, one important thing found in the general requirements in NFPA Chapter 4 and NFPA 58 is the odorization of LPG. LPG, as you said, it's colorless and odorless. There's no smell. However, NFPA 58 requires it to be odorized before being loaded into rail cars or cargo tank motor vehicles. It doesn't require a specific odorant. However, the most common odorant or most used odorant is ethyl mercaptan. It's the go-to way. Why? Because it has been seen that little amount of this substance can be sufficient to make it detectable in case LPG make LPG detectable in case of a leak. There are other odorants you can choose from. Now, this odorant or this warning agent must be detectable in concentrations low as fifth of the lower flammable limit. We explained what is the lower flammable limit earlier on. The addition of the odorant must be documented and its presence verified by a sniff test. Now, sniff test is one of the acceptable or approved method to identify the presence of there are other types of testing, and sometimes you need to send it for laboratory to verify, with results documented before the final delivery to the customer. Authorization is not required if it would be harmful or serve no useful warning purpose in specific applications. Because remember, the odorant ethyl mercaptan is a flammable substance. However, it has a lower boiling point than the LPG. What does that mean? I mean, when LPG evaporates, the odorant evaporates slower. This makes sure that always this substance will remain in the container if all of the LPG is evaporates from that container, evaporates from that location, to make sure that it will last for a long time and ensure that it will stay until the end of the release of the LPG, which makes it detectable throughout the leak. What else? Ammonia contamination. So ammonia has effects on containers, can result in it can affect the integrity of the containers. Now, LPG systems shall contain less ammonia than required to turn the color of red luminous paper blue. So red luminous paper, if it's wet with, if we wet it with distilled water and run a little bit of LPG to it, and it turns from red to blue, that means that this container is contaminated with too much ammonia, and it's not not acceptable at all. Now, this test is not required at every transfer of LPG. No, it's required whenever, well, let's say like that. A test shall be performed prior to the initial use or transfer of LPG systems that have been converted from ammonia service. So it's not required all the time. Okay, you need to do it at the initial uh, stage. What else? We have the portable fire extinguishers. Now, the LPG code, or NFPA 58, it refers you to NFPA 10 when it comes to the requirement for the travel distance, the sizes, the placement, the mounting height for fire extinguishers. NFPA 10 is the standard for portable fire extinguishers, and it requires that the fire extinguishers shall be rated for ABC. Class A files, Class B files, and Class C files. Class A files is the files in ordinary combustibles, paper, wood, rubber, whatever, plastic. B is fires in all the fuel is flammable combustible gases and liquids. C is fired in energized equipment. So the fire extinguisher shall be rated for ABC. Now, also one thing is mentioned, and very important, especially for people handling and responding to emergencies, including LPG. When the LPG gas is pressurized and catches fire, do not attempt to extinguish that fire unless the source is isolated or can be isolated. Why? If you fail to isolate the pressurized leak, if you attempt to extinguish, you may put out the flames, but the gas will still leak and evaporate, which can accumulate within a certain space, especially in closed areas or congested areas or confined areas. And it will eventually reach a source of ignition. It can be a static charge, it can be hot surface, it can be friction, whatever. And it will reignite in a violent manner. It will explode, putting people, property at risk. So I don't want to take a lot of your time. This is it for me for this session. I will make sure in the subsequent videos that I will include more information that you will find, inshallah, useful. So until then, see you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.